Hi everyone, this is Leah Cardos here, and this is an analysis of David Bowie's song I Can't Give Everything Away, track 7 from his album Black Star.
I can't give everything away.
All art gains intensity and force from the way that it is experienced. And the facts of Bowie's serious illness and eventual death build new intuitive layers into Black Star. Sue becomes elevated from its narrative about a confused and murderous lover as its visceral liveness comes to the fore. His whooping affirmations, egging the band on in "'Tis a Pity", feels more about the intensity and sensation of the moment rather than illustrating the context of an emasculating mugging incident. Elsewhere, constellations of ideas wait behind curtains, begging to be discovered and connected. Bowie's biting guitar figure from Lazarus points back to 2013's Plan, and then further back to 1977 when Mark Bolan gifted Bowie that very guitar, mere days before his fatal car accident. Another line threads plan to no plan, as they bookend the period of Bowie's last works, his final season of creativity and chaos. No plan to Newton and his revelation of nowness, and back to Lazarus again. For any meaningful configuration you might like to build, the dead star at the centre provides a crucial context. Without it, the album is opaque and mysterious. Once Bowie's death is revealed, it gains translucence and new coherence. Black Star brings the intangible to the sensory realm, transforming abstract, even metaphysical notions into physical material that can be heard, seen and felt. We recognise not only Bowie's voice, but also for the first time his breathing, his fingers, his hands rustling with paper, the materiality of his performing body at the edge of its existence. Intimate, tactile sounds that do not suggest the polished star image of Bowie as much as reveal something of the dying man behind the mask, the expiring spark at the centre of it all, now frozen immortal in sound. And yet, in spite of these ways in which Jones's non-absence is preserved, his non-presence is also keenly felt, especially in Barnbrook's design concept. The Black Star symbol that replaces the album's title in discourse and the artist's own image on the front of the cover has a mystifying function, signifying not only death and nothingness, as Barnbrook explained, quote, the black hole sucking everything in, but also mysterious cycles of life and everythingness, the Big Bang, the start of the universe. On the edge of silence is how Barnbrook would later describe the symbolism to me. A stubborn absence that interrupts and insists whenever the Black Star symbol punctuates a block of text, a vanishing point. In an interview with Barnbrook, he told me, I got to meet William Burroughs when I was a student, and I asked him about the future of typography. He told me, it's in between pictograms and Egyptian hieroglyphs. He basically predicted emojis. Our approach to Black Star was sort of like an emoji, but more serious. Also a bit like the monolith in 2001. It had to be beyond language. Even though Bowie had been singing about death in some form or another since the very start, his compositions in his final album seemed to possess a unique quality by virtue of their genuine proximity to Bowie's real death. Nicholas Pegg describes this difference as a new kind of serenity, not as angry as the next day or as traumatized as Lazarus. The elegiac seriousness of Heathen can't be found here, nor the melancholy and worry of reality's loneliest guys and disco kings. The mortal obsessions of one outside are abstract fantasy, a solvable mystery. Black Star's death is much closer, inscrutable, unresolvable. It's a quality that Boyce identifies as a new development in the long history of Bowie's handling of mortal themes. In the light of his serious illness, death is now literal rather than metaphorical. The proximity is what many great thinkers have argued opens up possible connections to the divine. A sense of fulfillment as a being in the Heidegger sense. If human life is finite, then finitude defines it. Ultimate meaning and true authentic life can only be experienced in confrontation with our own deaths. That Black Star is Bowie's last album invests the project with inescapable gravity that may or may not have been intended. The material was developed quickly in late 2014, during what seems to have been a challenging period in Bowie's illness progression, when Lazarus workshops necessitated his participation via video link and sessions with McCaslin and his band had to be postponed. It's plausible that Black Star was conceived as a farewell message from a seriously ill artist who recognised that he was dying. Then again, Visconti told Rolling Stone that at some point in mid-2015, Bowie's prognosis improved, while both he and McCaslin recalled conversations with him about new music ideas, more studio sessions, and even potential gigs in 2016. McCaslin said, as far as he was aware, quote, "We were going to record again in January. Everything was still moving ahead creatively, despite him being realistic, I think, about what he was dealing with. I apologise to anyone who has made it this far, looking for a firm answer about whether the uncannily consummate execution of Black Star was by accident or design. If Bowie had meant for these to be his last words to the world, then the answer you're looking for is both no and yes. Sometimes it's more wonderful to be left wondering." I Can't Give Everything Away is track 7 from Black Star. The tempo is 120 beats per minute, the tonality is F major, and the song form is binary, verses and refrains against solo sections. I Can't Give Everything Away is announced by an electronic drum loop that emerges and pulls focus from the thrashing turmoil and transcendence at the end of Dollar Days. While the ear holds on to the towering E note high in the strings, we are swiftly plopped down in the unexpected territory of F major. The musical elements that are the basis of the track are simple and repetitious. Harmony is grounded more or less in a basic movement of 1, 6, 4, so in this case F, D minor, B flat, but with added keyboard warmth and a rhythmic hook that provides forward momentum, teasing gentle dissonance against the underlying chords. The structure cycles between two defined sections of different phrase length. One, a sort of triangle, 3 chords in progression. The other, a square, 4 chords. The introduction and refrains are 12 bars long, rolling around in an effortless spiral. The verses and solo sections are 16 bars, with an extra 4 bars of B half diminished 7th, inserted between D minor and B flat. This adds drama at the peak of the melodic climb through the verses.
I can't give everything.
The verse melody begins on C, casting familiar shapes and climbing over similar chord changes that recall the verse sections of Soul Love from Ziggy Stardust. This sequence is matched with confessional-style couplets that are interrupted before they can reveal too much. A sudden, I can't give, leaping dramatically to high E. The word give is the expressive melodic limit of the song, repeating resolutely against changing harmonic colours, at first creating a surprising dissonance over sharp 4 half diminished 7, then again with more open-sounding Lydian effect over 4 major 7. Bowie's voice jumping between major 7th intervals before resolving on C on Away. The refrain keeps this pattern going, the word positioned over different chords, his high E sounding less alarmed now, casting more tender colours over the spiralling progression. The effect of this device is the feeling that after we hit the blockage that interrupts Bowie's confessional flow in the verses, the limit itself becomes the source of beauty in the song, from every angle the enduring musical theme and central point of fascination. I Can't Give Everything Away was tracked in the last week of recording at the Magic Shop in March 2015. The drum loop that opens the piece was retained from Bowie's demo, as was the harmonica performance, a detail that many commentators observed as redolent of similar harmonic parts from A New Career in a New Town from Low. Calling up ideas of transition and frontiersmanship. And also the opening strains of Never Let Me Down from the 1987 album of the same name, a candid and emotionally genuine expression of gratitude. Around these elements, McCaslin and his band construct a thickly layered wall of sound with stacked saxophones, flutes and synth pads, holding on long tones. The texture is almost monolithic, if not for the two moments where the arrangement reacts dynamically to the song. The repetition of the first verse at 3 minutes 12 temporarily halts to expose Bowie's vocal harmonies. And a moment at 4:28 when the synth pads drop out of the mix ahead of the final refrain. Further layers of synthetic strings in the refrain section smother the sound with presence and warmth. The mix sounds notably different to the tracks which precede it. It's saturated with sibilant brightness and harmonic distortion in the low mid-range frequencies. With its blown-out tones and sizzling extended high end, with what sounds like a shelf boost from about 10 kilohertz and above. The sound of I Can't Give Everything Away has enhanced weight and altered air, heavy and ethereal, huge and effortless. According to McCaslin, Bowie's demo had spaces earmarked for solos. His saxophone first enters the background of Bowie's refrain at 1 minute 52, then steps forward into the spotlight for an impressively virtuosic, utterly joyous solo that dances deliriously across a 16-bar, then a 12-bar section, lingering thereafter. Monda's guitar solo is similarly sparkling and playful. At times edging on slightly manic. Evoking something of the spirit of Robert Fripp soloing over Bowie's big major key anthems, Heroes and Teenage Wildlife. The rolling repetition of verses, refrains and solos lends the track an affectionate, lingering quality, like it doesn't quite want to leave yet. Let's go around again. When it does finally come to a stopping point, it lands unexpectedly on D minor with a dark puff that dissipates into a more open and mysterious figure, built from superimposed perfect fifths on D and G. Monda's guitar traces intervals high up the harmonic series, echoing Ronson's similar gesture in the first verse of Soul Love. And this figure resonates pleasingly with the world riddle theme of Strauss's Zarathustra, which was the musical motif of 2001. Another composition with a notable question mark ending that hints at the metaphysical possibilities of being. I Can't Give Everything Away became Black Star's third single, released posthumously on the 6th of April 2016. The release was accompanied by a music video created by Barnbrook, featuring animated imagery from their album design and synchronized lyrics. The animation depicts spaceflight with stars, symbols, constellations, and words appearing, spinning, whizzing past the viewer's point of view. It starts in monochrome, eventually moving into wild technicolor for the final refrain, with kaleidoscopic colours and shapes that bring to mind the Stargate sequence from 2001. At the end, as the word everything pulses on the screen, a figure of an astronaut vanishes into the vortex of coloured nebulae. These lyrics, the last words of the songbook, have rare and unusual candour. Here is no apparent obscuring language, no character mask. The mood is lovingly withholding, seeming to personally address the listener, in one respect gently asserting boundaries of personal privacy, in another way signalling a shared understanding between artist and audience. He knows we will know. He knows we will have so many questions. We know that he wanted us to know only so much, and we both know it's better this way because knowing too much spoils the magic trick.
The magician takes the ordinary something and makes it do something extraordinary. Now, you're looking for the secret, but you won't find it. Because, of course, you're not really looking. You don't really want to know. You want to be fooled. But you wouldn't clap yet. Because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back. That's why every magic trick has a third act. The hardest part. The part we call the prestige.
This is the moment in Black Star when the listening audience might feel seen and embraced. The lyric twirls on its logical incoherence, bringing together those impossible oppositional tensions into something reassuring, affirming and possible. Everything and more, nothing and less, no and yes, everything and nothing is all he ever meant.